RJ, as we kick off this Red Glare podcast, I mean, we were just talking about how long this week has been. That as we're sitting down to do this, it has been only 1 week since we last recorded, which was immediately after the men's gold medal game. It's kind of crazy how much has gone on in just a week's time.
Yeah, it's felt like a month in some ways, where whether it's the NHL coming back, I know we've both been busy in our personal lives. You see the different background behind me. I'm, visiting my parents to help take care of them. Like, so much has gone on. Maybe it's the fact that we also recorded at like 7 a.m. last time. We had a whole day, but that can't account for all of it. There's just been a lot going on in the hockey world.
There definitely has been obviously all of the fallout from the gold medal game and the celebration that took place while we were last recording, and we will of course talk about that. But also, as you mentioned, the NHL has been back underway. Multiple teams already have two, 3 games even under their belts since the NHL is back and picked up, and we already have a coaching change since the NHL has been back. One thing I didn't check was actually what is the latest a coach has ever been changed in a season? Like how many games for a team? Because we will talk about that when we talk about Jim Hiller being fired by the LA Kings earlier today. DJ Smith being named interim head coach there because it's pretty late in the season to be doing something like that. But we are going to start with the fallout of the Team USA victory over Canada in the men's Olympic gold medal game that we talked about last time. We had one of these. Again, I mentioned we recorded that just minutes after the gold medal game went final. And so a lot of what the story around that has been was things that took place while you and I were discussing the game last time, and then obviously subsequent events that happened either later that day or even in the subsequent days. And that of course was the fallout around, I mean there's so much of it, and I'll just kind of run through it quickly here because I'm sure anybody listening to this, you already know, like, this isn't a breaking news thing for something that's happened over the course of the last week, but it involved Kash Patel, head of the FBI, being in the locker room with Team USA and celebrating with them and getting drunk with them pretty noticeably. It involved the call from President Donald Trump to the team. It involved the horrible joke he made at the expense of the women's gold medal winning team over the phone, and the player reaction to that. And I mean, like, so much of that just alone, that whole thing, like that sentence still feels weird. Again, even though we're a week out of it and there has been so much fallout, it's still just like a crazy thing to say around this thing that, again, should just be, the conversation should just be, or should have been, that Team USA won gold for the first time in 46 years. And instead it's, why is the director of the FBI in the room with them? Why is our president saying things like this? Why are we, you know what I mean? Like why is any of this happening?
Yeah, and I mean it's an event we talked about it on the podcast before any of that stuff happened, talking about how it had been so long, really since 1980, since the U.S. Olympic men's hockey team had won a gold, and so it's been a long time since we've seen something like that. I think it's safe to say the world has changed a lot in that time, and that, I
Jeez,
mean,
yes.
take a look at anything in the news. I mean, I don't want to, like, past however long, right? And you could say these are things that would be unthinkable 10 years ago, 15 years ago. You tell that to anyone, even in the fairly recent past, and you're like, what? They wouldn't believe you. So, there was that. And then, of course, the State of the Union as well, with
Hmm.
the players going to that. And so there's just been a lot going on in addition to that. And then, of course, the Saturday Night Live yesterday as
Hmm.
well, the appearance. So just a lot of stuff going on for the players, a lot of non-hockey things they've been busy with.
Yes, yes. And then I think also Jimmy Fallon
Oh, yeah.
for at least the Hughes brothers and Hillary Knight, I believe, and maybe Megan Keller. Wasn't sure about that one. All four of them at SNL last night. Um, Again, we don't have to totally dredge up everything from like a breaking news standpoint, but with Trump joking about the women's team, like, oh, if I invite you guys, I'm gonna have to invite them, right? And just kind of just speaking about them in a unbelievably demeaning way, right? This team that accomplished the exact same thing that the men's team did, and just throwing them under the bus. They weren't involved in any way, dragging them into it, and forcing that storyline and narrative upon them when already professional women's athletes and women athletes at the Olympics, right? Even if they're not professional, but certainly with these women hockey players, vast majority of that team is in the PWHL. They are professional. They already have to deal with so much to have and they've had to fight through so much, particularly players like Hillary Knight, that kind of that previous generation of women who have really had to trailblaze the path that women's sports can be something that can exist at the professional level, that you can have NHL sized arenas for a PWHL team like we have here in Seattle, and tens of thousands of people are going to go out there and cheer for them, and to have again, whether it should be surprising or not that the individual would say such a thing, the fact that it is the president of the United States just undermining all of that, or at least attempting to, in the form of a bad joke, all over again. It's so exhausting. It made me so mad, and some of the anger has kind of gone because we're a little ways out, although I'm sure I'll find it as I get through my notes that I made about everything. But it was just so upsetting having to hear that when we've been covering the torrent, right? I'm there at the practices. I'm talking to these players all the time. They're already still dealing with that. We deal with that on our end with the social media side of things, right? So much anger thrown at us when it was decided that we were going to cover the torrent, right? Like there's still just so much of this hatred towards women's sports that I don't understand. I just legitimately don't understand where it comes from. And to have the president really feed it was just so upsetting to hear for me. And that I think is still like the number one takeaway for me, is just that it's like we're we're it, we're as a society like not progressing when it comes to the idea that women could just play sports for a living, like that isn't just something that can exist without people again having to take shots at them when they're not even involved in an event, right? Like he's talking to the men's team. Why are you even bringing them up, and why do you have to throw them under the bus like that?
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing too where, as Hillary Knight talked about, and you were there at the Space Needle when the Olympians, the Torrent Olympians, were there talking about what they had accomplished, and of course, they had to field a question about the joke and all of that stuff. And I look at what Hillary Knight said. I thought she gave a fantastic answer
Mhm.
on this, and she just said one sentence saying, okay, I thought the joke was distasteful and unfortunate, but then really talked about it, kind of how it puts her in that position where she has to sit in front of us, the media, and it kind of explains someone else's behavior, which she shouldn't have to do. She said it's not her responsibility. And I think the whole remainder of her answer, because she did go on about the accomplishment and everything, that's what she really wanted to shift the narrative towards, is what the women's team accomplished and everything that they did on the ice, because that's what the real story should be. And so, on the one hand, well, I'm like conflicted because we could, linger on it. And I know you said, kind of finding that the anger around it, being upset about it. On the other hand, it's not really what the players want. I think the players, pretty much all of them, have wanted to kind of move on from this and shift that narrative to focus on the incredible accomplishments of the women's team. And so that's why I almost don't want to, like, while I agree that wasn't good, I almost don't want to spend too much time, because it's this tough like catch 22, right? Where the more time we spend on it and trying to focus on it, that we're and correct something that's wrong, the more attention we're drawing to it in a way that the players don't want. Does that make sense?
It does. I really hated that that was the only thing to come out of that press conference too, though, was that her answering the one question that the players didn't want to have to deal with during that press conference when they're talking about coming back to Seattle, bringing 4 gold medals, bringing 5 medals overall, if you count Julia Gosling's silver, and trying to hype up the fact that there is women's hockey that people can watch post Olympics for the first time in a big significant way, because that's always been a struggle on the women's side of the sport, has been everybody gets really invested in the women's team as they go on and, win gold or win silver, right? Whatever they've done over the past, handful of Olympics, really since 98 when it's been an Olympic sport, women's hockey. And then March comes around and there's no way to view those athletes anymore, right? There's no platform for them anymore. They just kind of disappear until they pop back up again in 4 years. And the whole point of that press conference was basically just to remind everybody, hey, you watch these players at the Olympics, you can just come down to Climate Pledge Arena and watch them again, right? And you can watch and see all the incredible things that they're doing right here in the city of Seattle, and you can come and you can support them. And the only clip that really was taken from that press conference that was on all the different subreddits that I saw on social media and everything was her response to the one question involving what Trump said. And I was just, that made me basically as mad, if not madder, than and more upset than everything else, because that was literally what she was talking about. And that's what SportsCenter wanted to run with and did run with. Again, like the idea that this is the thing that's breaking containment for hockey and getting everything is so frustrating. And again, unbelievably avoidable problem by just not having the FBI director in the locker room. Like, right? And I think that this is where we could talk about it a little bit more, is not by focusing so much on the women's team, but by focusing on all of the mistakes that the men's team made and focusing on what they did, because you have the initial thing of having Kash Patel in the locker room, which it sounds like Bill Guerin, general manager of the team, was responsible for. At least that's what's kind of been circulated, is that he was responsible for that, which again, I don't understand that decision if you're the general manager of a team. It seems relevant, but that sets up this whole situation. And then you have all the men's players who afterwards, as they're asked about this, as they're returning to their NHL teams, trying to give non-answers, trying to talk their way out of it, and trying to really just kind of avoid it, make the problem going away, instead of apologizing right away and owning it. Now, since then, some of them have, but like by the last time you and I talked, when we talked about this a little bit on our post game live after the Kraken's first game back, none of them had at that point. Since then, what, Charlie McAvoy has apologized for it in an actual apology, but so many of them we heard the classic two things, and it pisses me off so much when everybody does this, not just in this scenario but in other ones. The there are better people to talk about this than me thing. So like, in other words, just trying to like kind of slide out of it, to which I would say, who is better to talk about this thing when you were in the room for this event, that, right, like, to the players. I don't know why they continue to do that. And if they meant just about politics in general, if live in America, if you vote, you're part of the political machine. You can talk about it. Like that's what makes you involved in everything, is just the fact that you have the ability to vote. I hate the whole there are better people to talk about this. I just genuinely don't understand that one. And then the other one, which was just the classic, like, I support women's hockey thing, and look, I have a wife, sister, or mom, and pointing to that, like, I'm not really that guy because I have women in my life. And that is just like when somebody gets caught, um, using like racist vernacular or something like that, and they're like, well, I have black friend, I have an Asian friend, whatever. And it's like, no, that doesn't absolve you from the behavior and the actions that you took. And that was basically all we got from the players upon their return, was just them kind of going to that well of those two things. And it's just like, those are lazy cop outs, in my opinion. I hate it.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna, for the like the second point where it was, because I mean I've got there's right, there was a lot there to
I know,
address.
I rambled.
So no, it's okay. But in like reverse order of your points, I guess, with the we support women's sports. So obviously you can see it through our actions thing. I'm gonna push back just a little bit. And again, I'm not excusing the joke there, but up until that point, I mean, you look at, say, Jack Hughes in the interview immediately after the game and saying, I think just asked about like, well, what did you think about once you scored the winning goal? Like, what was your first thoughts? And he immediately went to Megan Keller and the winning goal that she scored. And I thought that was really cool. Like that's one of the moments I saw like right after we recorded the first podcast. I was like, that's awesome. That's great for women's hockey. That's great that he said that. And it's kind of cool that that's just what came to his mind first. I mean, you have the Hughes brothers also, with their mom being part of the women's team's coaching staff. Like so many of the American men's players were there at the women's games, especially the gold medal game, and they were kind of there to cheer them on. Seemed like there were a lot of pictures and stuff of the two teams hanging out together and having a good time. And so that's where I think it's, again, it's unfortunate with the joke situation where it's like, to my eye, it looked like, at least up until that moment, there was a lot of, at least on the surface, support that you could see, and in a way that really I think could have helped, with the women's game and the men's game kind of coming together and building each other, building each other up. No,
Yeah, but it
I
doesn't.
know until that, yeah.
Right, but it doesn't stop then like your behavior once that moment arises. And this is, I think, like the classic thing that I'm talking about when it comes to that argument, which is, again, you can be around women, you can have female friends and still be sexist, right? Like away from them and still be that person. And Jack Hughes is one of the guys, when you watch that video, who laughs like the biggest when Trump says the joke, because he's pretty dead center on the video when that happens. And so it's one of those things where your actions go both ways. And I don't think that you can use, I attended the women's game and we hung out with them at the Olympic Village, to offset your behavior somewhere else, right? Like that's the thing that I don't think works. And they classically go for this, and I don't think that it works in other areas. Like I said, when somebody uses a slur, like a celebrity or whatever, right? And then they trot out the, look, I'm not that person, I'm not that guy. But it's like, but you did it. So you have to, like, you are, like, that was an action you took, was to do that. And I feel like for the men's team that applies.
I mean, look, I think it does to an extent. I mean, the other thing I've heard them saying, and I'm curious just what you think about like this, and if this is a, legitimate defense or not, but the fact that like they are, they've just achieved like the potential pinnacle achievement of their life and the win and everything.
Yes.
They're all probably drunk on a phone call. It can be hard to even like hear somebody. It like basically I'm looking at it and thinking there's a lot of stuff that could have potentially been said where like they all would have been like, ah, yeah. Like I'm talking to the president. Oh my God. Yeah. Whatever you say, sir, that sort of thing. Cause like I felt like there was some of that in the room too. And that's one where I would hope afterward that they would reflect.
Well, that's where, when they first had the ability to potentially apologize or say that right away, none of them took it. Right? They didn't take it. They didn't say that until many days after, when they were taking a lot of heat. And then I believe Dylan Larkin was the first one to say that. But I believe he said that on Thursday. It's a lot of time in between. Right? Because like I agree, like that could be something that happens. You're in the moment. Again, it is a whirlwind. It has to be a whirlwind that we can't possibly even imagine. But then, like, why are you not saying that like literally the next day, right? Like when you're asked about it, because that would be something that could happen, and they didn't. And again, they did not really start issuing apologies until Thursday, Friday of the week, after multiple times they were talked about it. They were asked about it by media members, whether it was guys that had to skip the State of the Union and visiting Trump at the White House, or the Hughes brothers being on Good Morning America, being asked about it and just kind of talking around it and not even saying that. So like that's the thing, is like, if that was legitimately what happened to you, which, it is a plausible thing that could happen. Why wasn't that the go-to right away? Right? Why is that become the thing on Thursday? And that's I guess where I'm coming from with all this, is just that I'm I can forgive. I can. I'm probably more forgiving than most when it comes to stuff like this. But you have to actually mean it when you apologize, and everybody but Charlie McAvoy hasn't still even apologized. So like, why should I forgive them? Why should I believe them if that's not the thing that they're coming out with right away? And that's ultimately where I'm at, is just you had multiple opportunities afterwards to try to make it right, and none of them took it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair criticism.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at with that. As for the rest of it, them visiting the White House, them going to the State of the Union, I think, look, a White House visit was always going to follow whenever a team came, did this, right? Because USA has not won gold in 46 years, I think there was always going to be a White House visit around that, just because of how much it means, and it is the most popular team sport of the Olympics. I think that is not something that would have been unique to Donald Trump being president. I think, any other president probably was going to do the same thing. Again, it becomes complicated because it's not like it was one, just the men's side of the tournament. So would other presidents have also invited the women's team? I don't know. And then also, that's kind of a slight to all of the other gold medal winning athletes that the US had at the Olympics, right? Like, I think it was one of those things where the men's team was always going to get favorable treatment coming off of a gold medal victory, regardless of who was in office, just because it is the team sport at the Olympics. And it is, for certainly casual sports fans, but also for a lot of non sports fans, the premier event at the Olympics. And so I think that a lot of what went down afterwards, once the players got back to the country, probably shakes out the same way, regardless of who's in office or not.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And I think, I don't think it's even necessarily a slight to the other medalists necessarily. It's just, look, some sports kind of are more, as you said, the premier sports than others. And so politicians are going to view that as, differently in terms of, okay, how can I get the maximum impact of, and look, politicians both sides do this, just, of inviting these people, and they look good and I look good, and it's good for everyone, right? So I think, yeah, it would have gone down pretty similarly. And so that's where, like, again, the Cash Patel thing is another thing, but like with the White House visit and potentially even the State of the Union, like I could see that going down pretty similarly. And it
The
just, I think
timing worked out for that, like the
the
State
time
of the
exactly. It's
Union.
just happened at the time. Like when you have a Stanley Cup winner or whatever, the timing doesn't work out for that. It's like, yeah. So I think it's just happened to be a result of that. As for, that and how it's politicized, I think that's just kind of the state of things with the culture war now. These things were not, at least I don't remember when I was younger, these being viewed as political statements or endorsements necessarily of that president. And historically, they weren't really. I mean, the only time I can remember really was like in hockey was really 2008 with like, or 2011. I mean, with Tim Thomas, not going to the White House, and I think a lot of people that criticized Thomas for not going basically made the argument it's not an endorsement. You just go with your teammates and you show up because it's just a thing to do, and you're being honored. Don't worry about it. Now might have the opposite opinion on this. And I think there's kind of a lot of, on both sides, just, you view it one way, depending on what kind of politics you have. And so I have my own thoughts on how we got here, but I can't get into that properly without this becoming a politics podcast, which it is not. And I very much don't want it to be. So I don't know. I think that basically would have gone down the same way. And I don't have an issue with it, like, say, something that maybe puts down women's hockey.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I just think it's the nature of the media beast now. Like, I don't
Yeah.
like it's that's just all it is that
Social media is very different.
social
Yeah.
media is different,
In
and it
2011.
exists at all compared to years in the past. Because I mean, again, this, you talk about championship winning teams going to the White House going back forever, right? I mean, like Reagan was big on that and standardizing that back in the 80s. So like there is a long history of it. Um, I think the thing that, and this also really bothered me with it, was Connor Hellebuck getting Presidential Medal of Freedom for, again, having an incredible game in the gold medal game, but to single him out and his performance from one game, when again, on the other side of things, Aaron Frankel allowed 2 goals the entire tournament. Right? As many goals as Connor Hellebuck allowed in that game, she allowed the entire tournament, but I'm going to single out Connor Hellebuck's one game performance there. And again, it's just one of those things where I agree that, I mean, I don't think another president would have given him the Medal of Freedom. I think that is uniquely Trump, but it is another perfect example of elevating the men's game and treating it with more importance than the women's game. When you have somebody like Aaron Frankel is hands down the best goalie in the world when you look at what she does at the professional level, game in, game out with the Boston Fleet in the PWHL, and then what she did at that tournament, allowing 2 goals in 5 games against, you know, in a best on best tournament, having to play Canada twice, by the way.
I think
It's like, that's insane to me.
Oh no, it's absolutely insane. And I mean, I had the privilege of watching Aaron Frankel play for the Fleet against the Torrent when, you know, when they came to Seattle. And oh my God, I can't believe that, you know, she's able to do what she does, especially at her size too. Like I could go on for another half hour about Aaron Frankel and how impressive she is. I think in this case, she and to an extent the women's team are kind of victims of their own success, because I think that the case you could make for the men's team, and particularly Hellebuck, like getting the Medal of Freedom and being recognized like above the women's team, is because they've been less successful relative to their competition, because it is the first gold medal for the men's team since 1980, whereas the women's team just kind of does that as a matter of, again, not a reason to like put them down or anything. They're just so successful that it's not as big of an occasion. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I
Not like making
I,
sense as a reason to do it. I just think
right.
that's what it is.
I I think it's because Trump's just chauvinist. Like I think that's ultimately what it is. Like I agree that yes, and you know, Hillary Knight joked about that on SNL, the fact that the men's team took 46 years. It was 2 whole Olympics since they last won gold, right? And that played to big laughs. Like I agree that there is like an element of that. Team USA on the women's side of things were pretty heavy favorites for that tournament. They won when they were expected to win. The men's team won when they were not expected to win. And there is a difference there. And there is a difference there in how the media should cover it, because those are two very different things in terms of expectation and what the storyline is coming out of that. It's just, I think like I said, that to me was like a perfect example of even after the story had blown up, of just continuing to like go down that road and everything. And I don't know, it's I know some people are going to say it's political and all of that stuff, but to me it feels more on principle when you're talking about just supporting women athletes and women in general. I don't think that that's political, even if it involves political figures. I think that's just like a principle you either have or you don't. And I think that, you know, well, obviously in the case of some of the people involved in this that occupy very prominent positions within our society, we know the answer to the question of if they have it or not.
Yeah. And again, I have more thoughts on, you know, if I were to go in depth into it about like, look, how I think he operates and, you know, the reasons why he does what he does. But again, I'm not a political commentator. Like, you shouldn't care what I have to say about that. But yeah, so in that case, I don't know. I don't have a whole lot more to say about it here.
All right. NHL bump, because this is the other thing, right? Did all of this take away from the bump that the NHL normally gets post-Olympics, where there is so many eyeballs on the gold medal games and people do get very excited, particularly if Team USA is involved. The American market gets very excited about hockey, and then that carries over into watching the NHL as it gets back to action. I don't know that we have numbers, at least I didn't see any numbers
It's
for
so early for the early games. Yeah.
right, for those first games back, if there was a legitimate bump to ratings after the gold medal game. But it seems to me that a lot of this that happened afterwards really poured a lot of cold water on any momentum that the NHL could have hoped to carry over from the Olympics and brought to their sport. Just as far as, that having to be a topic of discussion when the players are on things like SNL or on a late night talk show or on Good Morning America, right? Like that was the focus. Those were the clips going out to talk about it on social media, when you're scrolling through different things. And and we can talk about this too, the NHL's ridiculous marketing campaign to try to get people to watch the NHL coming out of the Olympics, which in my opinion is pretty horrible.
Yeah, I mean, is it what we talked about like right after?
It is. It's
You
the
know, okay,
chasing
okay.
silver thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm gonna push back on a lot of this, I think, actually. But the chasing silver thing, I get what they're going for. Because like they want, what was it? They were chasing gold before and now
Mhm.
they're chasing silver. And I know silver is like lower than gold on the Olympic. I think people are gonna get it. I think they're gonna understand. You show the image of the Stanley Cup. I don't know. I think people are gonna get it. It's gonna come together. I see what they're going for.
It's just it sounds so dumb coming off of the Olympics to be like we're chasing the thing that, again, because you're talking about them trying to convert casual sports fans and even non-sports fans. So their only point of reference is chasing gold, to then immediately be like you're chasing silver when they're still in an Olympic mindset sounds just ridiculous.
Okay, but you're not getting this out of context. This is in like some kind of commercial or whatever. And I imagine you're showing the Stanley
I
Cup
know
as you're
that you're
saying this.
showing the Stanley Cup.
I feel like it's not that much of a jump to be even for, just again, casual sports fan don't really know hockey. They're like, wait, chasing silver. What are you talking about? Oh, their trophy is silver. I get it. I feel like most people can put that together.
I know it's there. I know it's there. I just think it's not the kind of campaign that I think is really going to capture people and get them fired up to watch, right? It's DJ Khaled or it's Keenan Thompson, and I am a big Keenan Thompson fan. I don't know why DJ Khaled's doing it other than seemingly will just do anything for anyone who pays him money. But like
Yes.
which is, yeah, this feels very fair criticism. Um like it just I don't think it does a good job of capitalizing on the Olympics at all. And I get part of that is they can't use anything from the Olympics without paying the IOC, and they don't want to do that. I think also they're running into the problem of they're only showing it during NHL events.
Well, that's an issue.
Who's
Yeah.
like that's another thing is like I'll watch any other sport, including on the broadcasting partners of the NHL. And you know what I'm not getting? NHL ads to try to capitalize on this moment. And so I think that the chasing silver tagline for me, yes, it's dumb. I agree with you. The cup is there, and so it makes sense, and nobody's going to get that legitimately confused by it. But it's indicative of how poorly run the rest of the campaign itself actually is. That it's still largely just talking to its own fan base.
Okay, I will give you that. I'll give you that. And maybe my expectations are just low enough that I'm so pleased that they're trying to tie in the Olympics at all. Because that's that you needed to do that. And I
Yeah.
still was like, I don't even know that they're going to do that. So I'm pleased that they're doing that, that they're tying in the Olympics and trying to capitalize on it. Yeah, no, I don't think the execution is good. Also I haven't seen this ad anywhere. I don't like I need to go look at it because I don't know. I
I've
haven't seen
only
it.
sthis in Kraken games. So
Okay.
maybe they're just broadcasting on the Kraken Hockey Network, in which case they're really narrowing. This is a very targeted
That is
ad
not, yeah, that
campaign,
is not the
and it's
target
probably
market
not
you
the
want.
audience that you should be trying to get. But that's a problem too. It's not like you don't watch sports and you're not watching television. The fact that you haven't even seen it at all means that the NHL is not investing significantly in this as a campaign.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I think they really need to figure out a way to ramp this up by playoff time. And look, if I'm the NHL, I guess I understand right now not blowing all of your budget, opportunity, whatever. I know you want to capitalize immediately post Olympics, but let's be honest, your best product happens in like a month.
Yeah.
The Stanley Cup playoffs is what you really need to be selling. And that's why I'm okay with the like chasing silver thing, because you're talking about the Stanley Cup and
Hmm.
that's what you need to sell to people. I'm sorry, like regular season hockey is good. I love it. We work in hockey. I love hockey. But how you really sell people and bring in new fans, if you can get them to watch a Stanley Cup playoff game, that is the way to do it. And I think also the way you do that, reaching out to casual fans or maybe fans of other sports, or certainly fans of the Olympics, because a lot of people watch the Olympics and sports that they don't normally watch
Right.
for 3 out of the 4 years, because the stakes are so high, because everything is on the line, and because it's kind of best in the world on best of the world. That's why people tune in to watch. And I think you're going to have a lot more of that appeal come playoff time. And so like, I don't even think the post Olympics regular season game numbers, when we do eventually get those, are all that important. I want to see the playoff numbers. I think that's what's going to be the true test of getting people to the sport and getting people to try it when your product is best. And so that's where I think they haven't necessarily messed anything up here. And you wouldn't even be able to tell if they did a good job or not
Yeah.
quite yet.
Yeah.
And yeah, go ahead.
No. I agree with you. Like that is going to be the thing, and I do think like there will be a year-over-year increase in postseason viewership. I think
Yeah.
the trick becomes how big is that increase, and how many of them convert to fans after then the off season, right? How many of them show up for next year, and they don't need to show up necessarily on the television viewing side of things, but how many of them start going to games, which is really the thing that the NHL cares about, because that's still primarily where they draw their revenue from, is the gate receipts.
Yeah, no, they're a much more gate driven league than other any of the other major leagues for sure. And I think here's where you might disagree with me, but I don't think the NHL has necessarily messed up any opportunities here, even with all the stuff in the last week. I don't think that really hurts the potential for a post Olympic bump, because I think by the time it matters in the playoffs, one, a lot of that being in the news cycle is going to have faded. But I think the lasting memory for the average American who might be a fan of other sports, but not hockey, who may be tuned into Olympic hockey, they're just going to remember that the USA won gold, the dramatic finish, the Jack Hughes smile picture they probably saw, and that, oh yeah, these guys are playing now and it's the playoffs. So it's like really important. And I'm maybe going to tune in because it was kind of fun during the Olympics. I think the NHL has and who knows, like how many of these people, and not to wade back into the political side of things, but like how many of these people actually like watched the State of the Union address or even watched SNL? Like if you look at either side of it, like the
No, I
average
don't think that
American, like
matters,
they don't think about that stuff. They're not so politically involved. I think one, being in the media, and two, being in Seattle, we're kind of in this bubble where we're, used to people being a lot more online on social media, politically involved that maybe the average American is. I think they've still got a ton of opportunity with most people who probably just know, oh yeah, USA won gold. It's been a while since they've won gold. They hadn't since 1980, that Miracle on Ice thing. And that's the extent they know from like all of this.
Maybe. I don't know. I can't speak to it because I am somebody who is involved. I think though that if you're banking on, say, gold medal Olympic hero status for Jack Hughes, he's not going to be in the playoffs.
Well, that's really unfortunate.
Right? The Devils aren't going to be in the playoffs.
That's the thing.
Connor
too.
Hellebuck, President, Medal of Freedom Award winner, Winnipeg Jets. He's not going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's what's going
right?
to get him.
Like those are the things that you would be able to market if you're the NHL. Is you could pay to show the highlight of Jack Hughes scoring the game-winning goal, and then show him score a game-winning goal with the Devils, and be like, hey, guess what? Their game at 7 p.m. on ESPN. But you can't, because his team's not going to make the playoffs. So,
and I'm going down the roster now too. Matthew Tkachuk,
none of these
Brady
guys are
Tkachuk.
making the team. Yeah,
I know. I mean, how heavily is Quinn Hughes going to be leaned on here from the NHL marketing perspective with the Olympic tie-ins? He's the only, like, I know they have a whole roster full of a bunch of guys who are going to make the playoffs, but like of the really prominent guys, he's the only one, right?
He's certainly the only one that had a moment at the Olympics, right? His overtime game winner against Sweden is a legitimate highlight that you could use to try to grab people's attention and one for one bring that over. but yeah, he's kind of it. I mean, like Brock Nelson is on the Avalanche, and the Avalanche are going to be a good team and probably go on a run. Brock Nelson was he was a great role player on that Olympic team, but nobody who is not a pretty diehard NHL fan is going to know or recognize who Brock Nelson is. Right. And then even still, guess what? He's like the 2C who's taking care of business while that guy who missed the wide open net at the other end for Team Canada, Nathan McKinnon, is really the guy driving the bus on that team alongside Cale Makar, another Canadian. Right. Like I don't know. Like what? Dallas, Jake Ottinger, the guy who sat on the bench and backed up Connor Hellebuck in the gold medal game, is going to be trying to go on a run against Quinn Hughes in the first round, right? Like there's no marketability there. There's no marketability anywhere here. Tage Thompson, the 4C, is going to be leading Buffalo to the playoffs for the first time in a billion years. Like
he's one of the better faces they have.
He is. Yeah, because you at least say like he was the tall guy there.
Yeah, he's recognizable.
But like I don't know what you're supposed to do if you're the NHL anyway with this team, because none of the guys that NBC or the NHL were pushing for Team USA during the tournament, with the exception, I guess, of Quinn Hughes, even though he kind of took a backseat to Jack, especially at the end, are going to be heavily involved. I mean, Jake Gensel is another one, but like I feel like his is not a name that has carried over to a casual sports fan.
No, definitely not. I mean, and so much of it is just on Jack Hughes with the golden goal and the smile and everything. Yeah, I think this is going to be a big missed opportunity for the NHL to grow the game and get that Olympic bump. Not at all because of the political aftermath, just because these guys aren't going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy.
Easy solution. 32 team playoff bracket.
Don't do this to me.
If they had 1 game play-ins for all the non-playoff teams, just saying, that would get people excited. You want to make the regular season matter, and the seeding matter, have like each division puts up 2 teams that don't have to then play through a play-in bracket of single game elimination, and they get to rest. They get a nice like 2-week bye week, and everybody else can just have one bad bounce mean their season's over.
My eyes were all different levels of glazing over on that one. Dylan, I'm tired. I haven't slept all the last few days. I've been really busy.
Just saying.
I had to talk about political stuff on the podcast, which I don't. And now you're throwing that at me. The 32 team playoff. Oh man, I think that would actually be slightly more. Or no, here, cut it off like right. Actually, how low are the Devils? I was like, cut it off right after.
Devils are
the teams that you need.
Yeah. Second to last in the Eastern Conference, New Jersey Devils, ahead of only the New York Rangers, another team the NHL I'm sure loves having in the basement.
Yeah. So, okay, I was going to say, just do basically what you did in 2020 with COVID and cut it off after 12 teams for some reason, exactly because that's Chicago was 12th.
Mm-hmm.
And just be blatant about that. But the Devils are too far down the stands. I don't even think you can do that.
Just, top 15 teams from each conference makes the playoffs. Only the Rangers and the Canucks are out. Oh, God. Canucks fans would take that. They were just in Seattle. They were wearing trash bags, paper bags over their heads. They're fine with that.
Have the draft lottery for the first pick just be a coin flip. You just get each side of the coin.
Yeah, there's probably Rangers fans that would take that too. At this point, but I think like that's a big part of it too. Is just like I really don't think the Olympic bump's going to end up meaning a lot for the NHL down the stretch through the playoffs, and then I think that again the percentage that you have carry over to next year, we're talking about low single digits. Like it's not going to be a lot. It's probably in line realistically with just the natural growth of the game year over year.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm with you on this, and not to be like more cynical, but even if the guys were going to make the playoffs that matter and that they could market, do I really trust the NHL to do a good job with that?
It would be pretty lazy marketing. It would probably work a little bit, but it would be pretty lazy.
It's hard to mess up, I feel like, given that you got golden goal, overtime, right. A key player you can focus on who also has a brother who's going to, would then be in the playoffs. And like, I guess it would have to be, I don't know. I was like, a Devils Wild Stanley Cup final or whatever that you really could hype up or something, but that's not going to happen.
Right. And yeah, and again, like I just don't know how many outside eyeballs that really gets over just, again, mostly just hyping up everybody who just wants to see two brothers play for the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, that storyline would exist anyway.
Yeah. So it's already there. But yeah, chasing silver. There you go. Hashtag NHL chasing silver. Silver is so dumb, by the way. I hate the idea that silver is above bronze. Like, just to, like, last thing on the Olympics, silver should not be second. It's a dumb medal, RJ. It's a really dumb.
Why are you going
medal.
after silver specifically?
Because silver can't be used for anything. It's brittle. It's got a low melting temperature. It's not good for heat transfer. I don't think it's not conductive. You can't do anything with it. It is literally only shiny, and we've just assigned value to it because of that. The idea that you have bronze below silver when bronze is actually usable and was so innovative that you had an entire age around it, the Bronze Age, that was like monumental for humankind. But no, we got to give that to the third place person because second place needs silver, a pretty worthless medal that has like no use to it other than what we artificially assigned to it. Ridiculous. Just saying.
That is one of your trademark good takes there, Dylan. You want your like
name a use for silver.
You want your fiber optic cable medal for winning the Olympics, or what do you want? What would be your
I'm just saying, catalytic converters, very hot item. One of the metals in there, it's not silver. A lot of other metals in this world that are very, very valuable, useful for many, many things. Silver, not one of them.
All right, Dylan, officially anti-silver, letting everyone know there.
Yep.
Let us know what metal.
It's not even a good commodities market, like, and because that's the one thing it has going for it is artificially assigned value. It's insane to me. I'm just saying. We just went in order of shininess. So,
if Dylan was an ancient ruler, what would currency be made out? Like, what would the coins have been made out of?
Be like, I don't know. What's the most practical thing possible? Be like screws.
I mean, if stuff really hits the fan, I don't know. What are you going to give out at the Olympics?
Well,
food
that's
and ammunition medals.
That's one thing, though, that like if you are having a currency, silver, I guess, becomes worthwhile something because you can't use it for anything else. It can only be used to assign value to something, I guess. So there you go. I guess we did technically find a use for silver other than just looking pretty. It could be representative of something else. Like, any other thing in the world.
My economics major brain just wanting to go into explaining how currency works and why that having a means of exchange is so valuable.
It is valuable. It is, okay. But I'm saying that that's not an inherent trait that silver has. You can use anything. We could have easily assigned Gatorade caps such the same thing, right? Like,
oh man, you
Fallout with the bottle caps. I don't know.
You would be a wealthy man.
I would be.
That's for sure.
I would be. Let's talk about the thing that I know you really want to talk about. And you can talk about this forever. I'll leave. I'll go get like something to drink, and all of that. But that is the LA Kings finally firing Jim Hiller 59 games into the season, RJ, and DJ Smith being promoted to interim head coach. I don't know if he's going to finish out the season. I think they said he was going to finish out the season.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. Again, I'm going to look up while you get going here if this is the latest a coach firing has ever taken place in the National Hockey League. But I mean, they finally did it. They finally listened to us, RJ. They made the change that, both of us, but especially you, have been calling for quite a long time.
Yeah, they finally did it, and I don't think there's got to be something later in the season that would make a record. Lots of crazy things have happened in hockey. But Dylan, I do want to give you credit right off the bat you were first on this between the two of us. You said right after that playoff series against the Oilers that they blew it, that he needed to be gone, that he should not have been brought back for this season, and you were absolutely right. And I said, well, maybe he can learn from this. Maybe he can grow as a person, as a coach, and learn from the mistake of making, I think, the worst coach's challenge I have ever seen. I mean, coach's challenge is a fairly recent thing, but still the worst one I can imagine seeing. It'll be hard to top that one. Basically costing the Kings another first round series against the Edmonton Oilers. But the Kings, they finally did it. And I want to give them credit for finally doing it, because this is something that has needed to happen. It's been obvious it's needed to happen. I mean, obvious to you, Dylan, since the playoffs last year, but obvious to everybody with eyes to see for at least a few months now that this Kings team was playing lifeless, uninspired hockey, that the coach was clearly not the solution, that the players did not believe in the coach. And I think it was clear for a while that the players ultimately quit on him. And I think they had to even quit harder in order for this move to get made. And so I think this entire situation from, again, Jim Hiller was not a good coach for the LA Kings, but I think the real blame goes to decision makers above him. And I don't even mean Ken Holland, because I don't know how much power Ken Holland really had to do this. I think Hiller was probably forced upon him going into this season, but I'm talking about Luc Robitaille.
Yeah.
And the Kings executive brass, because they should not get a single bit of credit for finally making this move, because they waited until they had no other option. They were content to throw away their season. By the way, Anze Kopitar, franchise legends, final season, who, by the way, I think has done more for the Kings franchise than Luc Robitaille ever did.
That's
throw away, huh?
That's a hot take coming in. I don't disagree, given he won 2 Stanley Cups.
I think that's the ultimate measure. I mean, I think there's other people who did more than Anze Kopitar has for the Kings franchise. I don't think he's like the number one guy, but you just throw away his final season and make that decision every single day when the entire world can see that you need to make a coaching change, that you're not going to do it. And so I don't think that Robitaille and the front office deserve any credit for this firing, because they would have gladly done that, thrown away the season, had it not gotten to the point where it was so embarrassing and so toxic that they had no other option. And I think that point was reached in the Kings' 8-1 home loss against the Edmonton Oilers, where you had the fans chanting "Fire Hiller," where you had the players clearly having just checked out and given up on their coach. And I can't blame them.
Yeah.
They had no other option. But they waited so long that now you are saddling DJ Smith with a really difficult challenge, because you easily could have done this right before the Olympic break, given your new coach. I know he's been there on the bench or whatever, time to settle in, time to change things, time to do what he needs to do. No, they basically made the hard decision. No, we are keeping Jim Hiller for the rest of the season. And then we're forced to reverse it shortly after, because they couldn't see what anybody else could see. So this whole thing is a massive failure on the Kings. They finally made the decision they needed to. I think they actually have somewhat of a shot of making the playoffs now, even though I think not a very good one at this point, because they wasted so much time. But the Kings, it's a bad situation. I'll let you talk.
No, it's a horrible situation. Outside of the fact that they're only 3 points out of a playoff spot, they're only 4 points back from being in the top 3 in the division. Right? Like, that's the one thing that they still have going for them at the end of the day, is that they're really not out of it. And they at least have that, and that Panarin has 3 points through his first 3 games and does seem like a good, legitimate addition to the team, and that he's clicking and gelling well with the group. That is also something that they have going for them. Outside of that, they have nothing going for them. As you said, you're wasting Anze Kopitar's last year. You lost Kevin Fiala for the rest of the season at the Olympics when he got hurt. I don't know what you're supposed to do at this trade deadline if you're Ken Holland. And frankly, if I'm a Kings fan, I probably don't trust Ken Holland in that situation either. I mean, there is so much that is fundamentally wrong with this team, but the division they're in sucks. And they can easily come right back in it. And yeah, you lose 8-1 to Edmonton. Edmonton loses 3 games. You win a couple. You're ahead of them in the standings, and it doesn't matter. So that's what they're banking on.
Yeah, I mean, basically, yes. Like any team in the Pacific Division, their saving grace is that everybody else is also bad. And so that's why I say they still have a shot. In any kind of sane, reasonable season, in any kind of other division at any other time in the salary cap era, they'd have no shot. But because the Pacific is, I think, the worst division the NHL has seen in the salary cap era, they've got a shot. And so we'll see if DJ Smith can turn things around. But like you said, how do you handle the trade deadline? I don't know. It sounded like from Ken Holland's comments today that that the Artemi Panarin trade was kind of their big deal, and he I think hinted that the first round pick is they're not going to throw out that first round pick or move it. Like, doesn't seem like they're going to make another giant addition. And if that's the case, like, is this team good enough to climb into a playoff spot? I've got real questions. I don't know that it is.
I don't know that it is either. I think they're certainly enough to be in the conversation for what that's worth. Again, giving the teams around them. But yeah, I mean, look, do they need to make an addition? I mean, yes, there's lots that this team needs, but also you already landed Artemi Panarin. Like, that was the top possible guy on the trade market, and you got him. So in that sense, as far as mid-season additions go, you've already won the game, and you've already collected your not silver medal. Um, as for the latest, a coach has been fired in an NHL season. I forgot about this, RJ, but you don't
Yeah.
have to go back very far, because you just go back one calendar year to John Tortorella being fired March 27th, 2025, with
Oh,
9 games left in the season for the Philadelphia Flyers. That just felt like so, like, because everything was just so done by the time that happened. It just felt like it happened after the season actually ended, but it technically didn't. That does count.
I forgot about that. I forgot about that. That's really interesting because he basically fired himself
Well,
with
that was
with
also
that press
part of it, was
conference,
that it
right?
was like, yeah, it almost felt like a more of a resignation than a firing. But it was technically a firing. Outside of that, a record that I can only assume will never be broken is Lorne Henning of the Minnesota North Stars in 1987, who was fired March 31st with 2 games left in the regular season.
Do we know what the story is there?
I don't have the story on that.
We'll get it
It,
next week.
the only thing that is really referencing it is just the fact that is other people asking, was Jim Hiller the latest a coach has been fired in a season? Everybody being, no, the latest is this.
Wow. Okay, well, we have our answer. I got to look into that story for next week. We'll see if there's any interesting stuff for drama there, for the late firings there. But yeah, this is a crazy late firing, and also just the fact that, like, this also gets me because I was watching the DJ Smith, presser and everything taking over. This quote from him talking about last season and the playoff series against the Oilers that Jim Hiller basically threw away. The way we lost somehow carried on into this season. It ends now. The way we lost, you could feel it. You could feel it dragging the group down, and maybe we didn't believe in ourselves. It's over. That's ended. Today is a brand new, fresh start.
Yeah.
Credit to Smith for admitting that, because
Mhm.
that's a tough thing for a guy who was on the coaching staff all season to admit. But if that's what the assistant coach, who's now the head coach, is saying publicly,
Right.
and you knew that, and you still brought Jim Hiller back, one, to bring him back for the season, and two, to day after day, when it was clear the team didn't believe in themselves and didn't believe in their coach, to keep him on. I mean, that is so damning.
It's like what it sounds like then, or the thing that can easily be drawn from that statement. And whether this is the case or not, we'll never know, but again, you can draw this very reasonably from that statement, is all year when things have not been that good, has nobody gone and talked to DJ Smith and just been like, hey man, what do you think's happening? Right? Like, and if he feels very safe and secure in saying that at his introductory press conference, and it's not even really that, just like in his first media availability,
Yeah.
other people were feeling that too. And it just means that, again, nobody was talking to them, or nobody was listening to them. Because I guarantee you that Anze Kopitar, Drew Doughty, guys who have been in that locker room for a long time, probably have similar sentiments. And if Luc Robitaille or anybody in that front office, Ken Holland, went and talked to them, they would have communicated that to him.
Yeah, Drew Doughty, Anze Kopitar, those are vets. Those are guys who are not afraid, I'm sure, to privately express what they really think about a team. I'd be shocked if they would be the kind of guys that in that situation would hold things in. It feels like it's just everywhere. And I think there's been good also just reporting and talking from John Rosen about how high this goes and just how toxic he's hearing things are around the LA Kings, just at every level. And I think their problems are much, much bigger than even just the coach who they've now got rid of. It sounds like they've got a lot of issues, and I think it starts at the top with Luke Robitaille. I think the ultimate takeaway from this, you let him play out the season, not play out, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Keep him for the rest of the season because it's just off season. They're cleaner for this sort of thing. The coaching change you had to make urgently, but Robitaille has to go. And it seems like he might even, from the reporting, that he might somehow escape this. But I don't see how he possibly can or should. I mean, he took over in what, 2017.
Mm-hmm.
He's had 2 GMs now, including interims. He's had 5 head coaches. The team's won 0 playoff rounds, and everything around it seems to be toxic. And in this situation, everyone's head's in the sand in a very clear situation where you need to make a change. Like, I don't know what more you need to see. As long as he's there, I don't see them having any success.
No, I agree. I think the idea of him being president of the team has been, yeah, largely a failure. They have not had the success that they had under the previous regime, right? Even though he was part of the previous regime, like that's, I think, to be mentioned.
Was
but
he on the business
He
side?
was
Yeah.
on the business side, right? Like he was president of business operations from my birthday, May 25th, 2007 on. And so up until 2017 when he becomes president of the Kings. He was also an alternate governor for like when they have to do league votes and stuff like that. But so he was around for the Stanley Cup winning years, right? The little, as close to a modern day dynasty, so to speak, that you can kind of get outside of what Chicago did in that same time frame in the early 2010s. He was technically in the front office, but he was not on the hockey ops side of things. And so you can't really assign any of that success to him, right? They made money, I'm sure, so there was some success attributed to him on the business side of things, but from a hockey standpoint, he wasn't necessarily involved in those conversations, and if he was his voice probably was not the one that they were leaning on. But since he has taken over in 2017 as president, as you said, they have not won anything. And not only have they not won anything, they've had good players on their team and done nothing with them and wasted the ends of Drew Doughty's career, Kopitar's career for sure. Wasted years of having somebody like Kevin Fiala, Adrian Kempe's prime, like he's turning 30, right? Like you wasted all the years you had Philip Deneau under a good contract and stuff. Like all of that
haven't turned
just gone.
Quentin Byfield into the difference maker he should
Right.
be.
Yes, and that's not even talking about all the draft and
Oh yeah,
development.
the development.
Stuff,
Yeah.
right. Like you drafted all these top guys. We're talking multiple picks in the top 5. And none of them have turned into difference makers for you. Quentin Byfield being the best of all of them, and still he does not look like, again, a true difference maker or a true number 1 seed the way that ideally a second overall pick in the draft should. And so I think, like, yes, at some point, as much as he has meant to the franchise historically and as beloved by the fan base as he is, you have to, it is a business at the end of the day, right? And you have to put back on that business operations hat if you're ownership. And you have to look at it and you have to go, this guy is just not good for business because we're not winning. And winning at the end of the day is what's good for business when you're talking about a professional sports team.
And it's necessary in LA because that's where all the fans go. If you're winning, everyone's there. If you're not, nobody's there. That's just the nature of the beast in that market. So it seems obvious to me. We'll see if they make the right call in the offseason. I still wouldn't be surprised if he somehow escapes.
I think they're going to wait until Doughty retires. I think they're going to wait for the last remnants of that cup run to be gone, and for it to really feel like they have to do a full-on rebuild. And then I think they clean house and they start going with new people from top to bottom. And that's when Ken Holland will be gone. And I almost wonder if that was part of the expectation with bringing on Ken Holland anyway, was just like, look, Ken Holland is pretty long in the tooth, we'll say. Like, people had legitimate questions around who would bring him in and what sort of position he'd be brought in for and how long he'd be brought in for. And I do wonder if some of it from the Kings standpoint was, well, let's bring in a veteran who has lots of past experience, who can do this job, try to get as much out of the remainder of this roster as possible, and then in 2-3 years time we just, start over. And I think that maybe at that time they thought about that with Robitaille. I think now Robitaille has put himself in the position where he would be him being let go as part of that start over. But I think that kind of has always been the plan to an extent with the Kings.
Yeah. And I mean, brilliant maneuvering by Robitaille. I'll say the one thing he's been good at is maneuvering things in a way that they don't get rid of him. And I think that's part of like hanging on to Todd McClellan for too long. I think it's being extra patient on the coaches, hanging on to Rob Blake too long as a GM, not making those trades. But I mean, that those changes. But I think this is one of those things I was thinking about where the Kings, you've talked about it plenty with like the kind of the corporate ownership model and the general hands-off ownership and everything, and how I think that's really the best way to run a team. And there's a lot of benefits to it. I mean, the Kings saw plenty of those when they won their 2 Stanley Cups and had a great run in the mid 2010s. You just need to entrust the right person with everything. And they entrusted Dean Lombardi with everything, and he is a genius. And so it worked out very, very well for them. But man, these are the dangers. This is like the cautionary tale for hands-off ownership. Which again, I still think is better than hands-on ownership. The cautionary tales for hands-on ownership are much, much worse than this.
What are you talking about? Buffalo's second in the Atlantic, RJ.
I know.
It works. Maybe everybody should be listening to their owners all the time.
Yep. Top owner, Terry Pagula, for sure.
Oh, I'm going to clip that for sure. It's going to be my new notification sound on my phone.
Just get a text me. Top owner, Terry Pagula.
Yep.
My dad on his phone kind of, he just says RJ when I text him. RJ. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. I do think like that is some of it, right? Like how much of it is Luc Robitaille, maneuvering things behind the scenes in some grand Machiavellian, structure and system, and he's keeping around all these coaches to be used as pawns. I don't know how much of it is that so much as I just think the board likes him.
Yeah, well,
I think he has cachet
thing.
as being like a Kings legendary player, and I think that like you just get by on that when you're talking about a corporate board.
Yeah, certainly in the hockey world too. I mean, we've seen a lot of this close up. It's amazing how long you can stick around if you were a legend as a player, and you can charm everybody you need to charm. We've seen that plenty with Ron Francis, and I think Luc Robitaille has some of that same stuff in him.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it from a lot of former player manager. I mean, is Steve Yzerman potentially?
Yeah.
Although the Yzer plan
that's coming around,
working, or maybe, who knows? But yeah, it's an interesting one. Like I remember back, RJ, late 2000s through the early to mid 2010s, everybody was going with the former player general manager. Like that was the standard. And I remember reading hockey news articles about, is the day and age of outsider GMs gone? Like will we just have a league where all, at the time, 30 general managers are former players? And it feels like the pendulum is swinging back hard against that now, where I look at the vast majority of the most recent hires for general managers, and they are not former players.
Yeah, at any kind of like super high level. Yeah.
Yeah. They're former players, but we're not talking about, guys with
or I mean, even
long
some
NHL
not at all.
careers.
Yeah, like Eric Tulsky.
Yeah.
But I think the guys that didn't play at the NHL level are kind of, outclassing those. I think of Bill Zito as, the big example, Eric Tulsky in Carolina. Did Julien Brisebois? I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, Julien Brisebois didn't. So like those are 3 of the best GMs in the NHL. I think that's still probably the way to go. You occasionally get get a good hire like I know Joe Sakic did a fantastic job with the Avs for kind of getting promoted up above the GM role. Occasionally get a Steve Yzerman in Tampa, although, with Brisebois' success, I think it's fair to wonder how much of that was the collective. But yeah.
No, I think that kind of era is more or less ended when I look around the league now. It's just something I hadn't.
There's
really
been enough failures with it.
Now.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about it either.
Yeah. And then also it was like, I mean, there's been so many things. it's always trends based, right? Like somebody has success with one thing, so all of a sudden they get hired. I mean, for a while it was player agents making the jump over to the other side of the table, right? That was a thing for a hot minute.
Yeah.
They're
Although,
gone for the most part, I feel like.
well, I mean, Bill Zito though, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, I think he's the ultimate example of like knowing that
Yeah.
framework for, you know, for valuation stuff of players. I still think that's a good idea. Maybe that's why I'm continuing to defend it, but
Well, of course you'd be in favor of the lawyers.
they're smart. Yes, have a lawyer as coach, have a lawyer as your GM. Absolutely.
The coaching one definitely makes sense. And to bring it back to the Kings, I mean, I get going with DJ Smith and you have the internal guy take over for the rest of the season because it is so late in the season and you're talking about
You boxed yourself
23
in.
games. But also, Pete DeBoer is still available. And I have to imagine if you called, he'd pick up the phone.
Maybe. At this point, though, it's so far into the season. If you're Pete DeBoer, you're not waiting for a better opportunity.
Well, you could certainly wait and see because you're probably assuming that the Kings would still be interested in you if you waited until the offseason, right?
Yes.
Like, unless DJ Smith leads them on a legendary run, they're probably, and they could still keep him. They would still probably go through an interview process with other candidates come this offseason, even if they ultimately stick with him. And I think DJ Smith knows that. That's pretty standard when you have an interim coach, right? An assistant who steps up and takes over after somebody's been fired, but you keep them under the interim tag. That's pretty normal that you would still go through a traditional interviewing process come off season time.
Yeah. And so for DeBoer, like, I think this is something the Kings probably would have had a shot at had they fired Hiller early in the season, like they should have, or in the off season, where you have that desirable opening and a lot of runway for the season. If I'm DeBoer, I'm not taking any job at this point, unless it's for a team that is firmly in a playoff spot and something crazy happens, you know, if Dallas, Carolina, you know, if one of the contenders.
Oh, Dallas. You can pick
Oh
up
yeah,
the
never
phone if
mind.
it's
What am I?
Dallas.
Yeah. Why did I forget? Let's edit that out. Okay. Wow. I'm okay. Here's the thing. I'm looking at the standings right now. I have just the standings page open. I've had it open for the last like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's the top team on here that I have because I've scrolled just past Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, there it is. But anyway, if one of the contenders, something crazy happens, I'm taking that job. But
You sure you don't want to throw Vegas in there?
yeah, if Dallas, Vegas, San Jose.
What if the Devils need somebody, you know?
Yeah, Devil, Florida Panthers, you know, they
yeah.
yeah, if any of those teams need job, you know, have a job available there, I'm taking it. But seriously though, I'm just waiting for the off season. Like at this point, it's too far into the season to take something, and you know you're going to be the number one name on the market in the off season, so you're going to be able to take your pick of jobs. And so few coaches got fired during the regular season. I've got to think there's going to be more openings in the off season. Just the way it cycles around.
I'm so curious about that though, because we've had so much coach turnover the last couple of years that I'm legit wondering how many jobs are going to be available this off season, because you have like just looking at the bottom of the standings. Let's look at the bottom 4 teams in each division, each conference, excuse me.
Yes.
In the Eastern Conference, you've got Florida. They're not firing Paul Maurice.
No.
You've got Toronto, which could fire Craig Berube. Maybe.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Is it an attractive job though? Like, yes and no, right? New Jersey. Do they fire Sheldon Keefe after this? I don't know. Is it too soon
I
with
would.
him? I would too. I've never believed in him though. And the New York Rangers, who just hired Mike Sullivan last year, I don't think they're probably going to make a change. And if they do, that signals that it's a clear rebuild and they're truly starting over, and you're not interested if you're somebody like a Pete DeBoer.
Yeah.
And then Western Conference, you've got Calgary. Not an attractive destination right now. They're too early in the rebuild process. Chicago, but they just hired Jeff Blashill. They're not going to fire him. St. Louis, who it wouldn't be necessarily them firing Jim Montgomery so much as Jim Montgomery wanting out and them letting him.
Not willing to be there for part of a rebuild. Yeah.
Right. And then Vancouver, who is just starting a rebuild. So, you know, these would be the teams that traditionally would have head coaching openings. Not a ton of those are going to be actual openings. I don't know that any of them are necessarily better than LA either, outside of maybe Toronto, and I guess New Jersey.
You know, if I'm DeBoer, though, I'm not looking there. I'm looking at potentially Winnipeg, who I think really ought to make a coaching change, for next season.
Yeah, but is Winnipeg not just limping along and like that's eventually going to fall apart? Like I
Maybe,
don't
but
have
they're a
faith
season
long term
removed
in
from
that
winning the
roster.
President's Trophy. I think you still got pieces there.
Yeah, okay.
There's Edmonton if they flame out.
That's the one. Yes.
So that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at
Yes.
Edmonton if they flame out, which they're playing such bad hockey.
Do
It's
it.
certainly possible.
Like, do it. Regardless of what happens this year in the postseason, fire Chris Knoblauch, bring in Pete DeBoer. Like, come on.
Yeah. So I mean, I got the question earlier today. Was with the Hiller firing, just in your opinion, who else in the league should be fired head coach wise? And I was like, oh, that's fun. And I was saying it's tough because there's a lot of teams who should have done it like a couple months ago to try and salvage their season that just didn't. But my list of those teams was Edmonton, Winnipeg, Nashville. I would add them, but I wouldn't want to take that as the
no.
Toronto and New Jersey, who already talked about. So like there's a number of teams that should have fired their coach a couple months ago, but it's too late in the season to do.
Yeah. I mean, it is. You could have carried that list over from the off season. I mean, those are all teams we talked about, kind of being surprised that they didn't make changes, or we were like,
not Edmonton
we
or
don't
Winnipeg.
believe in this. Yeah,
because Edmonton or Winnipeg looked. I mean, look, it wasn't.
I think the problems in Winnipeg go beyond coaching. I think it's a roster thing. I think that roster's just cooked and it's had its day in the sun, and that's it. I think it is a slow decline from here. Like yes, there might be another playoff season or two, but there is in no way, shape, or form a true Stanley Cup run left on this roster, in my opinion.
Not a cup run, no. And I think in a lot of ways there maybe never was, but they're not 3 points under 500 bad. You can't convince me that roster's 3 points under 500 bad.
Barring not if they're healthy.
Yeah. So I think there's still something there that you could maybe work with, but it'll be interesting to see where he goes. LA. Here's the thing. Another question. You think any chance DJ Smith stays on as their next coach next season? Because barring a deep playoff run, I think it would take a conference finals appearance.
I think he was due to get another crack at being a head coach anyway in the NHL. And again, it depends on kind of how the Kings view themselves and everything. Yeah, probably not in LA. I don't know. I could see it if just nobody is really interested in the job. Like
it's LA. There's always going to be someone interested.
Well, yes, but that's what I would say about Pete DeBoer. Like if you're Pete DeBoer and these are all the jobs on the table, why not take the LA gig? You know you're going to be safe for like minimum 3 years, and you get to be in LA. And if you lose, anybody's going to probably lose with this roster. So
I guess, but if I'm him, Stanley Cup is my singular focus.
Right, but then you're saying Winnipeg, and that doesn't compute.
I think you got a better shot in Winnipeg than in LA.
I don't think so, because I think you always have the factor that Panarin talked about,
Connor
which
Hellebuyck.
is guys are going to want to go there.
Connor Hellebuyck. At least you have a goalie who can single-handedly take you there if you don't burn him out.
I mean, we assume they've only ever burned
you don't
him
know
out,
that,
so we don't know technically. But yeah, potentially. I don't know. I don't think so. I think you have a better chance of being able to retool the Kings roster just because you have the location advantage.
You also got Ken Holland in charge of that.
I know.
So
he got Panarin.
He did get Panarin.
He made peace between Panarin and Bailey. They're sharing the number.
Oh yeah, that's right. Update on that, everybody. That we talked about a couple weeks ago. They are sharing the number. Pieces have been found. We figured a solution would be possible, and they found it.
See, you
and
trashed
gave
Luc
Bailey a
Robitaille.
Rolex.
What if Luc Robitaille was the one who did that?
Oh, there's his value to the organization. Sorry, I guess they need to keep him around for. I mean, I should be fine with that. I don't like the Kings. Keep him around. Why am I calling for them to get rid of him?
Oh yeah, I can't wait for the offseason to have discussions around I mean, there's the Toronto one that gets talked to death by everybody, but what does New Jersey do, right? Like again, we're already over the hour, but looking at trade deadline and what teams could potentially be making moves and all of that kind of stuff, I'm so curious at what New Jersey does, because this is still such a young core that has so much potential, but yet we're seeing it now fail under multiple coaches. Right, same issues. Nothing's changing for them.
Yeah, and that is an issue. Like that is kind of more systemic problem, I think. Then again, neither of us are big Sheldon Keefe believers. Maybe if you got a better coach, you'd
Yes,
be
than Lindy
okay.
Ruff or Sheldon Keefe, who are
Right.
the two
That's who
coaches.
they've had. Like, I think there's a chance that the two of them are just not good coaches.
You're gonna say that when the Buffalo Sabres, RJ, are second in the Atlantic Division with Lindy Ruff as coach?
At a certain point, we do need to spend a significant amount of time talking about the narrative crushing Buffalo Sabres, who are on such a heater.
They can't lose.
They beat Tampa in Tampa.
They can't lose. They beat them 6-2.
Credit to the Sabres. I'm so happy the Sabres are going to make the playoffs, though. Those fans deserve it.
I know.
I'm happy to see them good.
For several years, when I really shouldn't have been a Buffalo Sabres believer, they're finally getting it done.
Yep. I know. As soon as you hop off the bandwagon,
I was the weight.
You were the dead weight on the bandwagon.
I was the dead weight on the bandwagon. I was right over the wheel. I was keeping it from turning. As soon as that balance,
you lodged
was restored,
yourself in the wheel.
Yeah, I was just jammed in the spoke for sure.
Yeah, in the spoke. Yeah.
Oh, that was the problem. As soon as I jumped ship, it could float and sail away to playoff land. So there you go. You're welcome, Sabres fans.
There you go. Yep. It's all on Dylan. As I go to NHL.com now and it refreshes the standings page and I see we're chasing silver, big giant banner ad. So I have now officially seen it somehow. Some of it anyway.
There you go. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the Red Glare podcast, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see y'all next time.